Hello, everyone, and welcome to our continuing coverage of E3 2016. The Ubisoft Press event just wrapped up. Now, a couple things about this Ubisoft Press event. They are known for being a little silly, a little wacky, and this one definitely did not disappoint. They actually started off with a little bit of a weird dancing thing. I think we were both looking at that going, what is this? Kind of weird thing.
Yeah, that definitely. I didn't realize it was for the that dance game,
Yeah.
but it because they just opened with that, and I was like, "Whoa, what are we doing?" And then they came into the dance game, and it made sense after that.
And welcome to Just Dance 2017. And then we're like, oh, okay, I suppose. I don't even know. Is that one of those games where you are on the pads or something? Or,
I think it's a Connect game, or a whatever motion game.
yeah.
So yeah, it's mimic the moves, kind of like Rockstar and you know Guitar Hero and all that stuff.
hmm But after that, they jumped into Ghost Recon Wildlands, which was actually their big unveil last year. And so, just to briefly go over what that game is, it's going to be a four-player co-op, open world. It's actually going to play real similar to Metal Gear Solid 5. And then we did get a release date on that, and it's going to be next year, 3/7/17.
Yeah, the game, the gameplay looks good. It's definitely interesting how they showed the team-based play in a single-player game, co-op, obviously. The one thing that I'm concerned with is the graphics. I am hoping they had the graphics dialed down in the demo, because if they didn't, then we're like 2 years ago graphics, and we should be up. It should look just as good as Metal Gear Solid did.
Yeah. But it definitely looks good. There's a lot of high action and a lot of jumping around between different vehicles and blowing stuff up. And, for these Tom Clancy type games, it basically looked like one.
Oh
Except
yeah,
for,
it felt more like a Rainbow Six game than a Ghost Recon game, but yeah, the Tom Clancy was definitely there in the game.
Mhm. And next up, they had the Laugh Fest, which was the new South Park game. And the funny thing about this game is they actually announced it last year, and it was a complete surprise because they came out with Stick of Truth, and everybody thought that was going to be sort of a one-off. But then they announced this one last year, and they're like, wow, this is an amazing announcement for a game we didn't even know we wanted. And this time we're doing superheroes.
Yeah, South Park. Oh man, if the gameplay is as funny as their presentation was, how are you going to get through the game? I'm going to be crying halfway through the game because I'm laughing so hard.
Yeah. Now, one thing that they did show this year that I thought was really cool is they're actually changing the combat system. And for Stick of Truth, it was basically just your old school Final Fantasy combat where you've got your two lines and you go back and forth. And this one almost looked more action based, but there were still tiles. So it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how it works, but it seemed more high action.
Yeah, it looked more turn-based as far as like XCOM or one of those games, but still had the action graphics as part of the attack.
Yep. And if anybody has not played Stick of Truth, I highly recommend it. The game actually is done by, I'm probably going to script their names, but is it Matt Parker and Trey? I just totally screwed up. Do you know what it is?
No, I don't know who made the games, but Stick of Truth was a great game. I think um, the new one is going to be even better than the last one. I don't think I finished the first one, but this one, it'll probably get me to the finish.
I just looked it up real quick because I want to make sure I have it right. So the South Park creators are Trey Parker and Matt Stone, so I was close. But yeah, so the actual South Park creators are actually working on this game. They worked on the other one as well, so you get their writing, their direction, and everything that goes along with it. So that game should be really really good. Next up was the Division, and we actually found out some really interesting information about the Division over the last couple of days. And I don't have the exact number. I don't know if you recall what it is. But they said it was something like 94% of the people who have bought the game have left it and are no longer playing it. And so it's crazy that it's seen that much of a drop-off.
Well, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot there as far as move along content. The content for the entire game was the same, and we played it for about a month, and then just kind of faded off after that.
Yep. But they did have some new announcements for the game. Basically, the next two expansions. The first one is called Underground. It's going to be available June 28th. What I took out of that is they basically said there's going to be, new missions to do, better rewards, and you'll get better rewards the further you go. And then the other expansion is called Survival. And just based on the trailer that they showed, it's like your character is involved in like an accident or something, and it appeared that your gear and everything was all stripped away, and it's like you were trying to sort of rebuild. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work.
Yeah, Survival, I think, will take you more into the total single-player aspect, and you are now the one being chased instead of, the one being the aggressor. Mm-hmm. So it should be interesting. You got to survive. You got to collect your weapons. That part of the game, it might bring a few people back to play just that for a little while, but I don't think it's going to be anything that has longevity in the game base.
Yep. And so the last note on the Division is for Ubisoft's 30th birthday, so to speak. Everybody's going to be getting 3 free outfits here coming up fairly soon. But let's go ahead and move on to VR. They actually had 2 VR games that they were previewing. The first one I'm just going to briefly talk about, and then we can talk about the second one a little bit more. But the first one they're calling Eagle Flight, and it's like a 3v3 PvP. You're like flying on eagles, doing sort of combat a little bit, but there was some sort of I think it was a rabbit or a squirrel or something, and they were like grabbing it with the bird, and they had to take it into like goals, and so kind of interesting.
Yeah, that one didn't hold my interest too much, but yeah, it looked like you were just eagles flying around trying to catch the prey, and trying to get it back to the nest and keep the other team away from getting it. Mm-hmm. As far as a VR game, it didn't feel VR to me. It felt like just another video game.
Mm-hmm. And then the next one is the big one, and it's Star Trek. And it was called Star Trek Bridge Crew, I believe.
Yeah, Star Trek Bridge Crew. VR, to me, out of all of the VR demos we've seen over the last few days, this is what VR is supposed to be. You are actually using your body, your movements to activate things in the game. I think it's going to be great. Now, whether you can play it online, hopefully you can, because trying to get 4 people in the same room, all with VR sets, is going to be just about impossible. But that one, if that is anything close to what they demoed, it will have me buying a VR set.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to be online. There's no way they could do it without it. And basically, to me, the game looks like Bridge Commander 2.0. But the real question that I have about it is it just sort of a tech demo, or is this a full game that could last 15, 20 hours? That's my real question. So the next game they showed was For Honor, and that was also unveiled last year at E3, and pretty much everybody that's seen it seems to really, really like it. The game at its base is sort of that old school, knights, Vikings, samurai type of hack and slash third-person action game. It's going to have a big multiplayer component, a big single-player campaign. They're going to have 4 different factions in total. They sort of just teased what the 4th faction was here at this E3, but I don't think they actually gave it a name from what I recall. And then the combat system is going to be brand new. They're actually calling it the Art of Battle. Now, I know this is the first time that you've seen the game, so what did you sort of think of it?
I think it looks good. It kind of reminded me across of Dynasty Warriors and Shadows of Mordor. You got your your cannon fodder that you're just going to whip through, and then you get to the boss fight in the middle of a fight, and it kind of movie-esque separates the camera, and you go at it, and then once that battle's over, you go back to the big fight. So graphics were amazing. And the gameplay, it looked pretty fast. It looked pretty fluid and smooth. So it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out.
Yep. So a couple of quick ones here, and I'm just going to briefly mention them. They announced a new indie game called Grow Up. It's going to be a puzzle platformer. They just did a very quick demo on that, so there really isn't too much more to say on it. And then Ubisoft has got 2 franchises. They've got Trials Fusion and Blood Dragon. So for some reason, they decided to combine the 2 games, and it's going to be called Trials of the Blood Dragon. And that is actually out right now. It was one of those surprise deals where they go, and you know what? The game is out right now. So I'm assuming it's on Steam. I have not looked, but I'm guessing it's probably there. But it seemed like some sort of it's like the bike stuff of Fusion mixed with weird shooter combat of the other game, which I've never even heard of. So I might have to take a look at it and see what that one's all about.
Yeah, that one I don't know too much about. I saw them briefly testing Trials at the beginning, and so obviously it's going to be the game same builder base as Trials, but I don't know what the Blood Dragons part of it's going to be.
Yeah. Next up on the list is Watch Dogs 2, and this is probably the one game that nobody really wants. And I'll just briefly, if you don't know what the story is, Watch Dogs 1 was super, super hyped. And then the game came out, and most people consider that it was not very good. But the main issue with Watch Dogs is the game is now the poster child for games being shown at E3 and then being incredibly, incredibly downgraded by the time it actually gets released. So they've got Watch Dogs 2 out now, or it's not technically out, but they announced it. And they've been showing gameplays and trailers, and it's just seems like nobody is into it at all. It's a new main character. Pretty much everything is the same from the first game, and it's just nobody's into it.
Yeah, Watch Dogs 1 was mediocre. I think I played maybe the first 2 sections of it and quit. Very repetitious. This one looks exactly the same. They didn't make any improvements that we've seen to the gameplay. I do not like the concept of the new character. And yeah, it's just not going to be one that I'm interested at all.
And then maybe even a stranger announcement that just happened is, they've got the Assassin's Creed movie coming out. And so now they're like, you know what? Let's make a Watch Dogs movie. And everybody's like, okay, I suppose. So apparently that's in the works now. So guess we'll see on that one. And then finally, the last game they showed, and this was their big announcement, and this is probably one of their weaker big announcements. The name of the game is called Steep. It is an open-world extreme sports game with skiing and wingsuits and, all that kind of stuff, and it's like races and challenges and multiplayer. It's not really my kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. How about you?
No, I'm not really into the extreme sports games. The graphics on it looked absolutely amazing when they did the mountain view.
Yeah, that's true.
But the gameplay, I think it's one that even those people that play that type of game are not going to play a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looked really generic, pretty basic. But it's hard to say if they're going to add some more stuff to it or what between now and release. But the release on that actually is this year. They're saying it's going to be December of 2016. They didn't give an exact day, but they did say December. But that was everything in the Ubisoft event. Any sort of final thoughts on this one?
I think Ubisoft did a good presentation. I would have probably started with one of the lower games and ended with either South Park or Star Trek. But, overall, I think it was a good presentation of what they were doing.
Yeah, and they have an amazing host, Aisha Tyler. does the hosting for them for about the last 5 years. And for those who might know her, she's Lana Kane on Archer, and she's also the host of the new Whose Line Is It Anyway? Actually, I don't even know if that show is still on. But she's a really, really good host, probably the best host that there is at all of E3. But that, ladies and gentlemen, will go ahead and do it for this video. So stay tuned for our continuing coverage on E3 2016, and we'll be bringing you more as things are announced. So we'll see you then.